don't mind me just giving you the most important tip that you'll need to know for TFT and how to get better. Okay, now, if you look at my match history, the past 11 games, I've come in the top 3, 10 of those times, and I'm not Gold 1, just to clarify some stuff. I am Platinum 2, and to clarify some more stuff, I've been fairly steadily climbing this entire time. The only reason why it's been slowing down is because of the fact that, you get a lot less LP now. Like, I'd be winning roughly the same, but I'm gaining less LP per win. My win percentage is in the top 14%, and that's really started to skyrocket recently after I made a ton of changes. I've played a lot of matches, so I've made a lot of mistakes. Obviously, I should have been winning more, but I know pretty much all of the mistakes that you can make, whether it stems from playing Dota Auto Chess in the past, which is probably where my biggest mistakes came from, and then it transitioned into what I can do to get better, and I really figured it out around this 3rd place spot. As you can see, actually no, this 1st place spot started the day, I slept on what I was doing wrong, and then ever since that day I've been doing pretty well every single game after that point. And I'm not trying to say that I'm amazing at the game. I still have a lot of mistakes I need to work out, like making decisions on items that I need super fast in the carousel so I can get them first, APM so I can place and buy units at the last second, and even some ping issues that aren't even my fault, but are things that just hinder me and keep me from being extremely good at the game. So I'm not saying that I'm amazing, I'm just saying that I have uncovered a key that unlocked something. I was averaging over several games on this day, with a couple 1st place finishes, averaging 5.3 and 5.7 in my average place, which is abysmal. Okay, this one I was already going to lose and I sold my units. This one I just put Vayne in because I was going to die anyway. That was kind of a rage quit mode, but I was already in 8th place, so don't judge me for these too heavily, please. But yeah, it took me from very poor finishes, because I was playing extremely poorly, into consistently playing well throughout all of these games. So, without further ado, I'm just going to jump into the biggest mistake that I made, and I think other people make, and I'm going to transition that into how to solve those mistakes, okay? So, let's look at some of these games where I did terribly, right? I tried to play around individual units, and that is the biggest mistake you could possibly, make in this game. Units are not the most important thing. Look at this game right here, okay? Tried to go Aatrox because I, at this point, was like, Aatrox is really strong because I hadn't played in a bit. I played a little bit, I saw a lot of Aatroxes in my games, and I was like, you know, I'm going to try Aatrox. I got an early level 2. An early level 2. I tried to force the unit because I hard rerolled for one after I got 1 copy of it, and it messed up my economy, and I really didn't know what I was going around. I was also like, Volibear's super strong, so him in there with some decent items, I guess, and it just fell apart in front of me. This next game, I tried to get a Kennen for the ninja synergy. I just was not able to do it. This game, I wanted to go Yordles, but had to hard reroll for Gnar and Kennen. Not even just one unit. I remember having to hard reroll for both of them, and that hurt me tremendously. This next game, I remember hard rerolling to get that last Ranger to try to get Guardian synergy, and the Anivia I kind of just got, so I threw it in there. So point is, as you can see, all of my lowest ranked games are things where I forced a unit and I didn't get a high star of them because I either A, wasn't building them at first and then like decided to later on, or I tried to force something that was contested, or I went for a build that only really works if you have all of them. Like Guardians, I had to force this Leona because I didn't really get a ton of them, but the Guardians are kind of weak until you get that second Guardian. And then as you scroll up, you see the same basic things. I tried to force Wilders and Sorcerers here, level 1 Gnar, and level 1 Irelia Soul. This one I tried to go Glacials, if I remember correctly, with some Guardians. The Guardians ended up working out, but the Glacials really didn't, and I also wanted some Rangers, and I forced Rangers, which is why they were low star. Basically, I'm ranting here, but you don't want to force units. You want to go for uncontested units, and you want to go for items, and this branches into the biggest thing that you should change about your game. So let's go here real quick, okay? I'm just going to go down a brief overview of items and what each of them represent. BF Swords, great on damage dealers and assassins. Needlessly Large Rod, assassins, and, sorcerers. Recurve Bow and auto attack based people, generally ranged like Rangers and Gunslingers. Then you have Tier, which is good on everyone, but specifically like high impact ult people. And then the last ones are all really good on tanks and shapeshifters, Chain Vest, Negatron Cloak, and Giant's Belt, because if they can get to their shapeshift and they get it off, you actually have a really good chance of winning the game, because those transformations can be extremely powerful. And the spatula is actually a really good just item to pick up if you don't know what you want. If you don't actually have items going in a particular direction, you don't really have something that you need at the time, you can just go spatula, right? Because that can transition into either A, an extra unit, or B, just better synergies down the line, which will help your build tremendously, because you, again, don't have to build around units, because you can just make another unit have the synergy that you need. So, when I say playing around items, I mean, based on the items you get, you build that comp around an item. And for this example, I'm really going to be using the Cursed Blade and Morellonomicon as the two big boys here, the two big main things to focus on. Morellonomicon, if I get a Morellonomicon, I'm like, okay, with this, I'm going to force a cannon, okay? And the reason why forcing here isn't that big of an issue is because, one, if I get it early enough, the pool is still full. So I'm like, okay, I can get an early cannon or Morgana without it being too contested, because I'm already deciding on at least a single unit early on, and based on that I can determine a sort of like synergy, but I'm determining that one unit. I want Morgana or cannon, whichever one I get first, I put it in, put Morello's on it, or maybe Cho'Gath, depending on how late I get the Morellonomicon, because I think Cho'Gath has a really good ult with this. That's not super important, it's just a kind of side note thing. But I get a unit that I know will be good with it, because up until around this carousel of Stage 4, or around the beginning of Stage 4, a Tier 1 unit with a good item like this, like a cannon with Morello's, I'll take that over a level 2 cannon just vanilla any day. A level 2 cannon without items, even a level 2 cannon, maybe even with Locket, I would take a level 1 cannon with Morello's on it, just because that's how powerful the synergy it is. The same thing goes for Morgana, and in a lot of cases, same thing goes for Cho'Gath as well, although Cho'Gath is more of a tank, so he might not get his ult off in that situation, but even then, I would take a Cho'Gath that's level 1 with the Morellos over that, just because of how much damage it does and how effective it is. Not only that, but if I can get a Cursed Blade, I'm like, okay, I'm going Volibear Gunslingers just because of how good this item is, and if it pops off, I could very easily have a top 3 build on my hands. And that's the basic idea. You want to look at an item and you're like, okay, this item is ridiculously good, and so I'm going to build my team around it early before too many things are taken out of the pool, and using that information, you build your team. And not only that, but again, you only need the 1-star early on in the game, because a 1-star of that unit with that item will be so good you won't even need that 2-star for a while, so you don't even need to force it and ruin your econ to do it. You might just naturally roll something. And the same thing even goes for like Demon on Volibear, and depending on when you're watching this, the patch notes for demons are coming out and they're going to be nerfed, but as of the making of this video, it's still very strong, so making like Volibear Demon will be super strong. Static Shiv, amazing early, put it on a Lucian or Gunslinger or like a Ranger early or something, and you could take control of the game. Basically, if you know an item is going to be good, craft it, and build your team around it. And not only that, but you can put a good item on someone. Like, I could put the Morellos on a Garen, right? Because it's gonna do well on him. But then, later on, once I finally get that cannon or Morgana or Cho'Gath, I can sell it. And, like, I could put a Static Shiv on, like, a Nidalee, but sell her later for a better Gunslinger. Or Cursed Blade I could put on someone and sell and put on a Gunslinger later once I get those. And so on and so forth. Basically, items are super duper important in the game. If you have the build of a really, really good item, put it in on someone random. You can always sell that unit and put the item on the optimal choice a little bit later. The next thing that you can do to increase your win rate and play around champion picks is basing your picks on rarity, right? And for this example, I'm going to focus on ninjas and nobles, okay? These two are the most important, in my opinion, for this idea because of the power jump that you get with these, but it also kind of works with knights as well, and even Imperials. So kind of these four are the big ones that I'm focusing on right now. But it even applies to like things like Yordles and stuff. So I'm just gonna jump into it. Everything I'm gonna say here applies to a lot of things that have like a giant power spike for a ton of one unit. So when I first started playing the game and my losing streak was starting, I was trying to force some nobles here because they're like goblins in Dota auto chess. And Dota auto chess goblins are pretty good, especially if you got that 6th one and you win the early game and you could generally get it. So I was like, okay, the same general idea could work. But what you should do is go for the lower cost units first, build little synergies around each one. So like have 2 other Blade Masters, an extra Knight, and an extra Ranger, right? Keep a Lucian on the bench, and then once you finally get offered a Kael or a Leona, you pick them up but you don't put them in, and then once you get all 6 of them, you could take out whichever synergy is doing the worst for you, and just drop the extra unit. Same thing goes for assassins, especially considering having more than one assassin gives you a debuff. It takes away the buff. With nobles, like, it's fine to have more than 3. It's just they're not super great individual units, and they really work well together later on in the game with the buff. So like if you have 5 nobles, I'd take out 2 of those and put in 2 more Blade Masters that have Blade Master synergy, or a Knight and a Ranger synergy. Like you want to build your comps around getting that higher rarity unit. Like this one, Garen and Darius and Katarina and Draven, fairly easy-ish to get, but you don't want to fully commit to those Imperials until you get the Swain, so you might want to keep one on the bench, hold on to it for a little bit, and then once you get the Swain, you want to commit. Same thing goes for Elementals, same thing especially goes for Yordles, which are actually all the way down here, because it's alphabetized. Because Gnar and Kennen are really contested units, right? So, because of that, you only want to have 3 Yordles, because the 3 Yordle is actually pretty decent, and it's actually getting buffed, which makes this entire idea easier. You want to go for like 3 Yordles and build some synergy around that, and then if you can get the better Yordles later on, the higher contested Yordles, then put them in. And so the biggest mistake people make, just to reiterate, is playing too much around units. And this probably stems especially from people who played Dota Auto Chess, because, well, back when I played Dota Auto Chess, items weren't super impactful. They were good, don't get me wrong. There were several decent items, and like a Mask of Madness could go amazing on a Troll Warlord or a Drow Archer or an Anti-Mage or something. But there weren't any like items so good that they make a comp. Like there was no Morellonomicon level item, or a Cursed Blade level item, or even like a Locket level item that's so heavily contested. Or Spear of Shojin actually is another huge one. Or one that makes somebody a demon. Or a comp that like takes mana away. Like that was set for one specific unit that you tech in, like Kassadin in this game, and the Anti-Mage in Dota Auto Chess. Like, there are a lot of things in this game that are extremely busted that you want to play around. Demons are being nerfed, as I said, but, like, items especially. As I've said before, a level 1 unit with a good item, like a level 1 Pike with a Spear of Shojin even, is better than a level 2 Pike, in my opinion, that has, like, nothing on it, you know? So the point is, you want to play around these items. I've already told you basically what item goes with what, and pretty much the highest impact items I've come across. Other good ones are, if you get a needlessly large rod and BF sword, you might want to go for assassins, because both of these work really well on assassins. And if you get an early-ish Akal, you could just make a Hex Tech Gunblade and put that on her. Static Shiv is an amazing item, especially early. Same with Spear of Shojin and Morellonomicon, and Warmogs is good if you think you're going to go tanky, or that could, you know, move you towards a tank. If you're playing against specific comps, you might want to build stuff too. Like if you're playing against a lot of magic damage, you might want to get a Dragon's Claw or some Negatron Cloak items. Playing against Gunslingers, or it looks like several people are going Gunslingers, the Ionic Spark melts them. With every Gunslinger taking 200 damage every time that they ult, Tristan and Lucian are going to melt themselves, right? So it melts some of their best units. And those are really the best items in the games. A couple more honorable mentions are the on-hit stuff like Disarm and Silence, and Phantom Dancer, and Red Buff also is huge. Sorry, Red Buff is actually huge. Forgot to mention that one. That one's also super impactful. But those are the biggest items, and I'm going to come out with a tier list for the best items in the game, just standalone, and especially the built-in with synergies. I'm also going to come out with a tier list on the best synergies in general, and best units, or maybe not best units, but best synergies in general, so just stay tuned for that, because I think that after playing almost 100 games, and finally actually, like, really starting to win a ton of games, Like, for the past 2 days, my average place has been, like, roughly 2.5 overall, which is really good in my opinion. Like, I went from doing abysmally, hard stuck gold, like, 3 or 4, to climbing to plat over the course of 2 days, with the vast majority of the games being top 3. Like, in my past 15, I've had 12 top 3 finishes. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this guide. It was just a basic rundown. If you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If you want a more specific guide or a better guide on this where I, like, go into more... I don't think I need to go into more detail. Just, like, better edited and maybe some, like, in-game examples I could. I actually have a couple in-game examples of, like, good transitions where I was going pirates for some gold as I saved up items, and then I transitioned into assassins using my pike with Spear of Shojin because I already knew I wanted the item on him. I had enough gold to actually get the assassins. I got a needlessly large rod and a BF sword, and I was like, this is a good build for assassins. So I just built assassins, and then finally when I got like 3 of them, I put them in for my pirates and transitioned my synergy, and actually was able to snowball the game and ultimately win. Or come in second. I think that was a game that I won, but I'm not entirely sure. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. This guide is something that I would probably take to heart. It's immensely important, and especially with the fact that with the patch notes coming out for 9.15, a lot of the things being nerfed are units, not items. The items will remain super strong, and some items like Curse Blade are being nerfed a little bit, but for the most part, items are going to remain pretty strong. Like, unless they're like, okay, all of these really good items that have been super strong in the meta for a while, like Ionic Spark, and more of a nerf than like 25 damage. We're gonna gut Morellonomicon, we're gonna gut Warmogs, we're gonna gut Red Buff. Until they start gutting the best items in the game, building around items will always be a good strategy, because that's something that you can't control as much as units. If you get good early items, you can build your team around that, because you can always re-roll or level up to get the high rarity units, or get the units that you need. So that's just one last final point for making it this far. The fact that this strategy will pretty much always work along with the other strategy that I told you, even if the meta doesn't really shift. Or even if the meta does shift, because it'll just stay tried and true. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to come out with at least 1 or 2 tier guides, or tier lists, and if you want me to come out with more guides on anything in particular, I'll be more than happy to talk about that as well. And I may come out with a guide for other, like, important things that you want to improve on, like specifically transitioning itself, some economy management as well, and in some cases also positioning, although positioning in this game isn't as important as Dota Auto Chess, but it's still moderately important. So if you want any of that, feel free to put that in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed. See ya.